G'day guys, another sort of tech episode here at Garage 5. Once again, it's after hours, so it's nice and dark and everyone's left the building. Wanted to touch up on engine mounts. So we're fortunate enough to have the support of Innovative engine mounts. If you haven't heard of them, hopefully you have now. And what they do is they do basically mount kits, bushing mount kits for various whatever engine mounts you can think of. People upgrading their cars or drive hard, they've probably got a kit on there for you. So what I'd like to sort of introduce is the different durometers, so the hardness of the poly bushings, where they start, what the benefits are, and most importantly, a cost to get them here and into your car in New Zealand. So we've got two sets of engine mounts on the table. So this set here with the red bushings, that's their standard, I believe 60 or 60A is the acronym, I suppose, for them. And they are good for, you know, just our dailies or the ones that we autocross every now and then, normally aspirated. They'll usually give you a horsepower range. For example, the red ones are rated for up to 250 horsepower. The next one up from that is black. I think they're about 70, 75. So for turbo applications where you're going from 250 to say 350, 400 horsepower. So great for those guys that are just pushing the larger numbers. Now we've gone a little bit silly and got these grey ones. They are rated for up to I think 500 horsepower. So we got these for a VVT engine. So we are upgrading our engine in the drift car, and that's currently getting built. So our aim for that one is as close as we can to 500 horsepower without sending a rod out of the side of the block, combined with a fairly lightweight chassis, about 800 kilos, 800 and a little bit kilos. I think we might be a little bit more competitive in the upcoming Drift South season, which is probably about 8 weeks away at the moment, maybe 10 weeks. So we've got a bit of work to do, but we've got a few things coming. So benefits of these, they basically keep your engine steady. So as this is mounted up within the engine, because of the stiffness of the mounts, basically it stops and reduces the amount of torque movement through your engine. So you may have noticed when you shift between gears, or when you go on and off the throttle, the engine actually rocks backwards and forwards, one way for acceleration and the other way for decel. And when you're boosting it and you change gear, all of a sudden the engine goes from torqued up, it'll spring back all of a sudden with rubber bushings, and you'll find that you may misshift. So you're quite easy to see is your shift lever. When you go on and off the throttle, you'll notice the shift lever goes one way. When you let off, it bounces back the other way. And that can, and we have found basically you'll misshift. Say for example, you go into third, you'll miss and accidentally grab fifth or sixth or first or second, depending on which way you're going, and that can be bad, especially if you've got a clutch in, and aim for the gate again. So that's time lost when you're doing a flying lap, or if you accidentally put it into first from too many speeds, that's a really bad time. We initially stumbled across this when we were building Tony's race car, and he was having major shifting issues. And when our drift car was sort of low 200 horsepower-ish, It was okay, like occasionally you'll feel it. So we chucked the Mazda speed engine mounts in it at the beginning. That did make an improvement. However, as we increased the power in the drift car, we noticed that the problem was getting worse and worse and worse. And there was a point basically where Tony and myself were both like, well, this isn't really going to work. We need to sort of come up with an idea of how to reduce the amount of mischiefs. Now, Tony's car is a track car and does circuit, so you can imagine doing laps, and when you're getting timed, getting a correct and accurate shift is fairly important. And obviously at higher speeds as well on the downshift, you don't want to miss shift and cause your engine to over rev as well and break things. With us doing drifting, once again it's the same thing. Because the engine and the car is loaded sideways, you'll notice it a lot more. So the movement of the shifter, you can really see between clutching in and changing to the next gear. You notice the shifter jumping around, and plenty of times I've clicked fifth instead of third, and it's like, oh bugger, like pull it out quickly and put it back in the right gear, you know. So it's quite important. Now the other benefit of the innovative mounts is you can see there are different slots through here, and you can see on, say, that one, this one here. So you've got different settings for the height of your engine. So for example, say this one here, it could be that's set at the highest point, sorry, lowest point, this one. So that means it drops the height of your engine down. And what that effectively does is lower the center of gravity of your car. So performance points, and again, in that aspect. Now, if you're adventurous and you want to lift up your MX-5 and go off-roading, you can put it to the highest setting. So then that way it lifts your engine up, and you just get a little bit more clearance between the subframe and your sump. So when you do go off-roading and you knock something on the bottom, you know that the oil sump is a little bit further away, or you can chuck a bash plate, like a thick bash plate underneath to help protect it. The middle setting is generally the standard height. We normally run middle. We don't do many four-wheel drive, or sorry, off-roading MX-5s. Obviously we have a few in the country in New Zealand. They are very cool, and hopefully one day we might get around to it, or rally ones. The lowest setting, probably not recommended, as we found that the sump actually sits just below by a couple of mil to the lowest point on the subframe. So if your subframe is already scraping, you're definitely going to be scraping your oil pan, and eventually that'll wear through, or you hit something hard enough, it'll crack, drop your oil, and you know what happens when we have no oil in our engines, right? So, but the flexibility to do it is there. So you can adjust them, do this, do that, you know, whatever you like with them. The other really cool part about these is, now the bush, the poly bush inside here is not fixed in terms of, you can change these bushings in and out anytime. So you can buy just the bushings from Innovative, and you can change them according to how you are building your car. So if you started off with a street car, you can start with the red ones, these ones here, and then as you build more power or add more power to the car, you can change these out to the black ones or the grey ones, depending on where you're wanting to end. So the welded and metal powder coated parts will stay, and then you just replace the bushings, nice and cheap, and you don't have to buy the whole kit over again. So for the MX-5s, they do one for all the models. So your NA6s, your NA8, 1.8, your MB8, your MB2 VVT engines, which are these ones. So this is what we're going to be putting into our drift car. So it's got the extra bit at the back to hold on to the back of the front of the sump, I think, sorry, front of the gearbox, I should say. So they have these mounts made differently to suit different vehicles generations. And then these red ones here, they are NC ones. So we've had some in the NC race car that we built last year and early this year. They were the black ones, so they can basically handle a bit more boost when we get around to doing that maybe later this year. And as well as NDs. So yeah, they were really easy to install. Being a two-part product, you can put one piece in and then basically squeeze the other half in there. They bolt into your factory subframe spots. Allow for an hour or two to install if you're working from home, but yeah, not too bad to do. We've also supplied and helped other cars like a couple of Hondas and also Toyotas get these engine mounts in their car, just helping along with people's projects, and as they're finding the engine mounts are worn or torn, or if they're really expensive, like say the Mazda Speed ones, they've just basically chosen to upgrade and be future-proofing their build for later on when they actually add a turbo or want more power or get it on track. Now you might be wondering, what's the HMV like? They're not too bad. So the first step, the 60A poly bushings, you do notice a little bit of more noise and say harshness come through the drivetrain. Nothing that's terrible, you know. It's a noticeable sort of difference, but like I said, it won't be ringing in your ears, or it won't be shaking your bones, or vibrating the whole car to bits and pieces. However, as you do go up in the hardness of the poly bush, then it is a lot more noticeable. So if your engine's out of balance, or there's some other things going on with the harmonics of the engine, then you will notice it more. So in that case, it's probably worthwhile balancing your engine, since you're at a point where you've built the engine. So when you're building it, just balance it up. And then using things like the super dampers, so the fluid dampers, whether it's super damper or ATI, things like that will definitely help reduce the harshness from the engine to be transferred to the body. So just keep that in mind when you choose something. Like I said, you don't have to go for the hardest one that you might end up with in terms of horsepower and torque. You can start with a road going one, then move or upgrade the bushing part as required. So nice and easy, user friendly. Yeah, so very cool. So what we're doing is basically we are stocking these on our shelves. Generally we stock a full range of the 60A bushings, because most of us are perhaps road normally aspirated. Most of the turbos on average we see are about the 250, maybe up to 300 horsepower. It will handle the 300 horsepower, not a problem. It'll see a little bit more movement than say the black bushings, but still very capable and able to sort of handle the extra load on the engine mounts. If you do need something that is a bit more harder for your bigger horsepower cars and builds, then we can special order them in. Generally the turnaround is about 2 weeks for us to get them out of the States, out of Innovative. If it's a very unique or custom order, then it may take a bit longer for them to sort of design or develop something for us. But yeah, most of the time we do keep at least one set of each on the shelf. Now cost-wise, they start from memory about $500 New Zealand landed for a pair. You might think, holy smokes, that's a lot of money, and don't get me wrong, it is a lot of money. However, comparatively, for example, the NAs and the MBs, I believe the Mazda Speed engine mounts at the moment are about $460, and these are a significant improvement over those. But if you want just something that's a little bit stiffer and you still want to retain the smoothness of a factory rubber mount, then the Mazda Speed ones would be perfect. And if you're dailying it and you're not going to drive it too hard, then obviously the factory engine mounts are still your best option. And from memory, they're about just over $100 for a pair of those these days. So a couple of options from standard daily drivers to slightly sporty to very sporty and to silly, like what we're about to do with these grey ones. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can show you or have a chat about what we're doing with our engine as well. It is a bit of a unknown territory for us, so we've done a little bit of research, managed to collect some parts over the last 12 months off a lot of awesome people around the community who have not say donated, but they've moved on from their projects, and you know, we've picked up excess parts here and there. So only recently we've managed to pick up all the bits that we've needed. So that's the engine's getting built. We're doing a new wiring loom with some sensors, so safety stuff. So we might get Jacob to come in and talk a little bit about that. Things like why we have the sensors that we run, or why we have multiple sensors, what we're looking for, and how we're trying to basically keep the engine safe so that when we do try and push the limits a little bit more, we can catch issues before they manifest or before they cause really big problems. So basically trying to avoid sending rods out of the side of the block, basically. So yeah, so it should be interesting, and we'll keep it going with a couple more videos from the guys around the shop. So, but for tonight, we'll just keep it there, nice and simple, one product. Yeah, so if you are interested in a set of those, feel free to give us a message, or if you've got questions, feel free to get in touch, and we can help you make an informed decision or give you pricing or turnaround times. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that.